world is changing. 8 years ago, I was almost dead, and medicine saved my life. And I would like to help the doctors, and the researchers, the scientists who saved my life by helping to make a better way for medicine to operate. My talk is titled, Let Patients Help Improve Healthcare. I don't say who needs doctors. I need doctors. I don't say patients know everything. My doctor and I helped to create this society for participatory medicine. The symbol is a handshake. It's not a revolutionary fist. It's a handshake. I worked in marketing before I got sick. And so when I started blogging on social media, I picked one brand name and I stuck with it, ePatient Dave. So on Twitter, I'm ePatient Dave. On Facebook, I'm ePatient Dave. My website is epatientdave.com. If you Google ePatient Dave, it's only me. And if you need to ask for my Skype name, you should go talk to your marketing people. Curing cancer is complicated, but a good brand name is not. I will talk a little bit about my book, because Omar asked me to use some lessons from my book. The book is, of course, called Let Patients Help. I wrote it with my doctor. It's been translated, I think, into 8 languages now. Maybe we'll want to make an Italian translation. I don't make much money from it. It's there to help spread the word and teach the world. In fact, this is the first time I'll announce that a company in China has just bought the rights to the book. So soon we will have 1 billion readers in China. Here's one way the world is changing. More than half of all the people who have ever been 65 years old are alive today. I'm one of them. Last month I became 65. Now when I was a little boy, 65 did not look like this, right? But the reason, so this was posted by a surgeon. The reason is, consider this, today we have 7 billion people in the world. At the end of World War II, we had 3 times less. So today we have 3 times more people in the world, and many of us are not dying like me because of medicine, so we're surviving to become older. This is my college friend, Jay. On Facebook, he said he's having a pacemaker put in his heart. The reason he's alive to have a pacemaker put in his heart is because twice in the last 10 years, medicine saved him. He almost died, but medicine saved him. So this is why I say, let patients help improve healthcare. Right? The number of doctors in the world is not expanding at the same rate. So what we want to do is this symbolism of the partnership. And that requires information, which is why we are here today. Good information is needed everywhere, or nobody can do their best at their job. Now, I have an important lesson at the beginning. Very often when we see people creating a medical conference or a government policy meeting or something like that, they say, we don't need patients to be in the meeting because we're all going to be patients someday. That doesn't work. The way to look at it is patient is not a third-person word. We're not talking about the people who are out on the highways or on the trains. We're talking about the person who sits at your breakfast table, because sooner or later your time will come when this is you or your mother or your child who is really sick, and you will want to do everything you can to help. Now, in 2009, some of our friends created this society for participatory medicine, and they decided that this medical society could not be run or could not be managed by just a doctor. It had to be a doctor and a patient. So they elected my doctor and me as chairman of a medical society, which is crazy, because I don't have any medical training, but I am a patient. Notice the way that he sits at the computer. We form a triangle. The doctor, the patient, and the computer. He has always felt that this information is a shared plan, the same as if you were having work done on your house or building anything else. I mean, when you work with people at work on a project, you look at the same information, right? Why would we do it differently? Well, Dr. Sands says, how can patients participate? Dr. Sands is his name. If they can't see what I see. Okay? And I will send all of these slides to you so people can look at them later. Now, he was a friend long ago of a man named Tom Ferguson. I never met him. He died before I came along. This man saw the future. In the years after Woodstock, when the world was changing 40, 50 years ago, he saw that most of what we do in medicine is take care of our families at home. But when people get really sick, the major thing that holds us back is information. The doctors had the information and we didn't. And then he saw that the internet would change this. So he saw people out in the world doing things. So here's Dr. Sands. He wrote the first medical journal article about how to do email with patients. And that was in 1998. So if your doctor, or if you're a doctor, your patients, if you're not able to do email, well, he published the instructions in 1998. This is the man who formed the cancer patient community that I joined when I got sick. And he came up with this name, e-patient. Equipped, engaged, empowered, enabled. Of course, it's electronic. It's a patient who is thinking and working with their doctors instead of just saying, I'm sick, please save me. Now, I know some people, when they're sick, they just want the doctor to do the thinking. That's okay with me. But when somebody wants to help, I think that we should find a way to let patients help. This is a senior doctor at my hospital named Warner Slack, and he's been saying since the 1970s that patients are the most neglected, underused resource in healthcare. Now, we have to think about this because patients don't have medical training. So what is it that I could do, that you can do, that your family can do, that would actually help? Well, to discuss this, Omar asked me to point out some things from my book. Well, this is the first one. Patients are the most underused resource. Now, here's how this happened in my life. In 2006, I was coming to see Dr. Sands for the first time in a few years. I had moved to another area and I came back to Boston where I live. And instead of waiting until I got there to give him my whole long list of things, I sent him an email with 12 items. Now, some people say, you sent your doctor an agenda? Well, my doctor liked it because he had things he was thinking about too. So in everything else, if you go to see a lawyer or an accountant, an attorney, you don't wait until you get there to set the agenda. Here's how this worked out, okay? As we came close to the meeting, I started having a strange thing happen in my right eye. And first I thought I must have something stuck in my eye, so I tried to get rid of it. That didn't work. And it started growing. It was like a spot that was sparkling. And then it got bigger and bigger, and I could see it was shaped like a boomerang. And then it got bigger and bigger, and in a half hour it was gone. And the first time this happened, I thought, oh, this must be a flashback from my hippie years. But the second time it happened exactly the same, I thought, what was that? And the third time, I started taking notes, because it happened 3 times over a period of a couple of weeks. Now, normally, you would wait to see the doctor before you start describing it, and there, while you're in the doctor's office, the doctor's mind starts thinking, what could this be? What could this be? Instead, I went on Google. I went on Google. I spent 2.5 hours before I found exactly what it was, and I pasted it into my email. I said, this is what it looks like. I gave him the URL, the same as you would do with any colleague. I found this, what do you think? So he could look at it before our meeting. I pasted in my list of when it happened. Now, people say patients should not diagnose themselves on the internet. I didn't diagnose myself. I'm not a doctor. But this was a website about ophthalmic migraine, optical migraine, so I pasted that in with a question mark. See, I wasn't trying to be the doctor, but I was trying to be the best help to my doctor that I could. This is let patients help. As it happens, we got this cleared up before we even got to the meeting. Now, another thing that I had was a shoulder problem. I just had a stiff shoulder. It wasn't really pain, but you know, instead of reaching up like this to a shelf, I'd rather do this. So I said, I'll probably need to see a doctor. Well, he sent me for an x-ray. And the morning after the x-ray, I will always remember, and if you've had news like this in your family, you might know what I mean. Some people who have received news like this can remember exactly what the sights were, the sounds, the colors, everything. He said, Dave, the radiologist called me, and I called up the image on my screen. Now I thought, can I call up the image? Can I see the image on my computer? Well, today, no, but you saw this? So he saw what I'm going to point to here. Right? He said, your shoulder's going to be okay, but there's something in your lung. When your doctor tells you there's something in your lung that shouldn't be there, you start thinking, what? Was I supposed to feel something? He said, we don't know what it is. It could be a scar from some old infection, but you know, I thought, okay, do I need to get in my car and run right down there? He said, no, I ordered a CAT scan, CT scan. Please call this number and make an appointment. Well, I went in for my first CAT scan ever, and this is what we saw. That's the size of a golf ball. So the first one was over here, this one was down here. So now and there were 5 of them in both lungs. Now we knew it was cancer. Lung cancer doesn't look like this, so now we knew it was cancer that had spread from somewhere else. And we have the question, where's this from? Well, my wife came with me, she's here today. She's a veterinarian. She knows I'm not a dog, but she's seen lots of ultrasounds. I had an ultrasound of my whole abdomen, and it turns out it was in the kidney. I had 2 big tumors in the right kidney, and what happened is apparently pieces of the tumor will break off and circulate in the blood, and they get stuck in the lungs, and they start growing. So I had 5 kidney cancer tumors growing inside my lungs. This is not good. Here's a diagram of kidney cancer. Stage 4 means it's spread. From the website of the drug I eventually got, there's that thing in my lung, totally by coincidence. The first pain I had was in the left leg. I thought I had a sore knee, but it turns out the cancer was growing in my leg bone. It eventually broke in May of that year. I fainted in the bathroom. I fell on the floor and landed on it. When I woke up, Ginny was shaking me, and my thigh bone was shaped like this. There's one in the head. That shows a metastasis in the brain. Mine was in the skull. So I exactly matched this diagram, except that I had other tumors also in other places, including just before my treatment started, I had one started growing in my mouth. I had kidney cancer growing out of my tongue. I was really sick. And the best available information said that my median survival was 24 weeks. Half of people this sick would be dead in 5.5 months. I remember waking up at 1 o'clock in the morning, looking at the ceiling of my bedroom and thinking, what am I doing sleeping? My life is ending now. I thought, what's the weather going to look like the last time I look out a window? I had to think about saying goodbye to my mother, my daughter. The reason I'm talking about this sad stuff is because it helps if you look at this from the position of a person who is desperate to survive. Now, some people just want the doctors to take care of them. As I said, that's fine. But if somebody wants to help, can we find a way to give them a shovel so they can do some of the work? In my case, I thought, okay, what are my options? The odds are bad, but some people get better. What can I do? In my case, I chose to get engaged. Now, here's the thing. An engaged person, you can tell when you're talking with someone if they're engaging with you. They're thinking, they're listening, they're exchanging ideas. A disengaged patient thinks that medicine is like a car wash. You roll up your windows and you go through and you get things done to you. So an e-patient is somebody who is thinking and working with the experts. Amazingly, my doctor sent me to the internet. As soon as we knew it was kidney cancer, he knew about a good kidney cancer patient group, not managed by doctors, on acor.org. This is now a company, smartpatients.com. Consider, imagine that you are in a desperate situation, and within 2 hours, see, I used to be on CompuServe. I know how to be on a forum online back in 1989, I mean 25, 26 years ago. So I posted my first message here to the other patients, and within 2 hours they told me this. First, this is an uncommon disease. Find a hospital that does a lot of these cases, because they will be more experienced at how to work with it. There is no cure, but a drug called high-dose interleukin-2 sometimes works. Now, this was 8 years ago. My oncologist says today maybe I'd get something different. They said it usually doesn't work, but about half the time, when it does work, half the time it's permanent. So here I am, 8 years later, I'm completely better. The side effects are severe. They sometimes kill patients. That's why you need an expert hospital. In my case, my blood pressure dropped to 50 over 30 at one point. I almost died from that, but they knew what was happening, they stopped the treatment, and I survived. They said, don't let them give you any other treatment first. Apparently some hospitals don't understand this. And they said, here are 4 doctors in your area who do it, and their phone numbers. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is useful information, and to this day, this does not exist in the medical literature. So it gives us a big question. Doctors and scientists are taught to look for evidence in the medical literature. So what's going on here? Well, we found an answer to that question. I'll have it in a couple of minutes. Well, for me, it was not easy, but I survived. So this is that same tumor 50 weeks later. It's an amazing drug. It's a very strong immune system drug. It took those tumors and just went like this. They didn't have to cut my lungs open. They did take the kidney out, of course, but then everything else was just the drug cured all the tumors everywhere. In the first week, the tumor fell off of my tongue and everything. Now, 2 years ago, the BMJ, see, it's very important to me. This is not against medicine. It's very important to me to be a good partner with medicine. BMJ, the British Medical Journal, asked me to write an essay. They invited an article on how the e-patient community helped save my life. Now, for this article, I didn't want to just say, okay, all you doctors out there, you should listen to what I say. So I asked my oncologist, what would you say to other doctors? And here's what he said. Dr. David McDermott at Beth Israel Deaconess in Boston, he said, you were really sick. I don't know if you could have tolerated enough medicine if you hadn't been so well prepared. Here's what he was talking about. So now imagine this in your family. I'm probably dying. There's one drug that might save my life, but the side effects might kill me. So I thought, okay, how do I get trained to prepare for the side effects? I went to the literature and there was nothing. Not a single article about how to deal with the side effects of interleukin. So, and I asked my oncologist also, and they didn't have anything written. So I turned to my patient friends, and I talked to 17 people who'd been through it. Now, this evidence is not as good as if it were a top journal article, but Dr. McDermott says he thinks it helped me survive. So every single side effect that happened, you know, the first one was a little bit of wind came through the room, and I started shaking like crazy. And instead of thinking, what's happening to me? Am I dying now? I knew, this is called Rigers. It's a shaking side effect. You call the nurses, they bring warm blankets, They cover you up, you warm up, but you're still shaking for 30 minutes and then it stops. So every side effect that hit went like that. And here I am, alive today. So here's the big question. How can it be that the most useful and relevant information can possibly be found outside of where scientists are taught to look? And it turns out we have an answer for this now. This is a diagram about social networks, of course. Everyone is connected to everyone. Well, now we understand this is like capillaries in the body that move things around, and information is like a nutrient that flows through these capillaries. So it used to be, 30 years ago, that all medical knowledge existed in institutions and came through a one-way arrow to the person. We had no ability to get at this information. What happened means we can help. It is not an insult to the doctors. Because today, sometimes this person can bring information. And in fact, what we're moving toward is a world where we all swim in the same pond of information. This is the internet. I know patients who have lived longer because they found information that their doctor hadn't seen yet. This is no insult to the doctor. Did you know more than 2,000 articles are published every day in the medical literature? 2,200 articles every day. It's no insult to a physician if a patient has found an article that the doctor hasn't. It's a partnership. What we now understand is that this person's network can draw information to them if they choose to be engaged. In fact, the world we're moving to is a network of networks. So this is going from a closed system, and this has happened in all parts of the world. You know, if you plan air travel, it used to be you had to go to a travel agent who had access to the information. And today the information is all open. It doesn't mean it's easy, by the way. You know, I mean, when air travel was new on the internet, you'd get wrong information. When credit cards were first computerized, sometimes you'd get wrong things on your bill. It takes time to fix this, but the result is it all works better. When a patient wants to Google, it's a sign of patient engagement. It's not something that should be discouraged. If people are not good at it, the answer is to teach them to be better. Because, next thing from the book, everyone performs better when they're informed better. A doctor does their best when they have correct information. That's one reason that a mistake in the medical record is really bad. Well, and the patient performs better. So what I say is it's a mistake. Some people will say, I'm not going to teach that to people. They won't understand it. And as a result, then you say, because they don't know anything. Well, why don't they know anything? It's because we wouldn't teach them. Right? So what we're finding is that doctors who do participatory medicine are happy to help teach somebody. Now, I'm the first one to say I am no scientist. I don't understand all the vocabulary, but I want to understand as much as I can. Okay? This brings up the subject of paternalistic caring. Now, some people will talk about paternalism as a bad, arrogant thing. Well, I survived and I have a granddaughter now, so this gives me a whole different idea. In this case, the baby is being taken care of by other people. Paternalistic caring says, no, honey, no, you don't know what you need. I'll take care of you. I'll decide for you. Okay? This is a good thing to do at some points in life. Now, this is my granddaughter. Gorgeous. When she goes for a ride in the car, she goes in the back seat, in a car seat, facing backwards, and her parents take her where she needs to go. They take her to the doctor, they take her to the swimming pool, and so on. But there will come a time where they say, Zoe, what do you want to do today? Do you want to go to a movie, or do you want to go to the beach? And there will come a time where she sits in the back and says, I want to go to the beach today. And there will come a time where she's the driver. And the art of a change like this is to understand, when does autonomy become appropriate? The problem is today, she has no ability to understand why she's in the back seat. But as she gets older and understands more, she will. And this is the same sort of thing that's happening with autonomy with patients. This is, you know that a social movement is becoming special when you start to have songs and slogans and chants. Well, in America, we have a group of people who say, "Give me my damn data!" And in fact, there is a rock video now. It's, "One for the doctor, two for the nurse. She's saying to go to treatment, so you don't make me feel worse. Give me my damn data." They go off this 4-minute rock video. Crazy stuff. And there are people from the government in it. It's great stuff. Anyway, now there's this concern. Well, wait, patients can't understand this stuff. Well, so what do you do? See, I used to work in the typesetting machine industry. All right, now typesetting machines were wonderful things, linotype machines and CompuGraphic and so on, and they were complicated, but they did beautiful work. And then desktop publishing happened, and all of you stupid people got fonts, and people started making ugly newsletters, and oh, well, people can't understand this stuff. What you have to do in every other industry is, if the data is unclear, you have to make it clear. Because if your stuff is hard to use, you go out of business. Well, in medicine, instead, we blame the victim. Patients can't understand this. So here's an example. So this is fuzzy on purpose. Thomas Getz was the editor of Wired magazine, and he got some blood tests done, and the numbers came back in just rows and rows of numbers, okay? If you have ever looked at the results from your laboratory, from your doctor, it looks like this. He thought, you know what? This is what a financial report looked like in the 1980s. And financial analysts in those days would say, well, consumers can't understand this. This is why you need a financial analyst. Today, all the financial companies have good graphing software so that they can make it easier to understand your information, because otherwise they'd go out of business. So he went to his art department and said, make this look like a financial report. And here's what they came back with. Comprehensive metabolic panel, red for bad value, green for good values. Here's where you are. Vitamin D, red for bad value, green for good value. Here's where you are. For every number. Now look what's happened here. It's the same data displayed with better software. So the information in the numbers becomes clearer. The only thing that changed is the software that shows you the information. And the same stupid consumer becomes informed and enabled. And this is what happens when the data gets loose. In desktop publishing, once the print jobs got into PostScript and PageMaker and Quark Express, 100 companies wrote software to work with Quark Express. They made the information prettier and more powerful and so on. And nobody would go back now. Because here's the rule. Clarity is power. Clarity is power. When something is clear, you are empowered. When something is not clear, you are disempowered. Let patients help take care of their families. I said when it's your child or your mother, everything looks different. And another cousin that's in the book is let patients help with quality and safety. Here's where it gets very personal for me. The story has a good ending, but this is my mother the month that I was almost dead, in January of 2007. I didn't look very good, huh? So there she was holding her son. Well, 3 years ago, she had a hip replacement. And when she was moved from the hospital to a rehabilitation place, the information could not be transferred electronically. Does this sound familiar? So it was typed in, and she has a thyroid condition, hyperthyroid, and they typed it into the new computer as hypothyroid. And the point here is the best doctor in the world could have killed her, but only because he looked at wrong information. All right, people perform better when they're informed better, right? And nobody can perform to the top of their ability. What saved the day? Well, one thing we have in the United States, it might be true here also, is that in many families, the person who manages the whole family's health care is a middle-aged woman. Well, this is my sister, and she was there along with our other sister, and that's Mom, of course, and they understood this problem, and they asked, could we look at the chart? Now, most hospitals will say, no, 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 that's our information. You don't need to see it. But they said, sure, have a look, and they found the mistake and fixed it. So that saved, it saved the disaster. That's let patients help. And then finally, one of my last subjects is let patients say what patient-centered means. This is really interesting. Lots of people are saying patient-centered care is what we have to do. And then people go around having meetings saying, what's patient-centered? Anybody know what patient-centered is? Well, ask the patient, for heaven's sake. And yet they won't. Because there usually are no patients at those meetings. So who gets to say what's in the patient's best interest? Well, some of my friends are very far out on the front lines of this. This is a book called The Autonomous Patient that was published by Angela Coulter in England in the year 2000. So that was 15 years ago. So you can start thinking about this. If you've ever followed the women's movement, you know, the early thinkers from 100, 150 years ago, what they talked about is very similar to what we talk about with patients. Let me make up my own mind. I'll tell you what I want. Meanwhile, Sigmund Freud is writing books. What do women want? Try asking a woman. So, in the book, we have several, I call them tip sheets, 10 things to do. So here are 10 things e-patients say, and you can do this every time I get a new doctor. I start with this one. I say, I'm the kind of person who likes to understand as much as I can. Can I ask some questions? Now, often, well, always, in my case, they'll say, sure, but what do you do if the doctor says, no, I'll ask the questions? Well, I don't know, you might want to find a different doctor, I don't know. But this is how you can explain, because doctors see all kinds of people every day. And then other things like, I found this website, what do you think? Now, all the evidence says that most people look up health conditions on the internet. You know, my baby is coughing, or you know, whatever it might be. I have a rash on my foot, or something like that. It's no disrespect to the doctor. For one thing, it's a lot easier to get an appointment with Google. Right? And you can spend as much time educating yourself. But if doctors say, stay off the internet, that is telling people to stay stupid. Okay? Now, there is garbage on the internet, of course. Some people in this room I know are aware. I found my wife on the internet in 1999 on Match.com, the dating website. But before I found her, I went through some not so good search results. You know, you have to think and know what you're looking for. We're very happy, by the way. I take her with me when we travel. All right? How can I talk with other patients? Right? What will this cost? Now, in the United States, this is a big deal. I don't know if it's that much of an issue in Switzerland. Are there any other options? This can be important because sometimes, you know, a doctor or a hospital will recommend what they have, and they might not mention something else that's available. I talk with my doctors about how strong is the evidence. I had a skin cancer on my face, and the doctor recommended a particular treatment, and I said, so how strong is the literature about this compared to other options? And he was happy to show me the article. And I said, well, wait a minute, it looks like this is actually better than this. And he said, well, that's not really the same thing because you don't always use that one. So he wasn't angry. It didn't take a half an hour to discuss it. That's this. It was a different doctor, not him. All right? This is tricky. If you're going in for surgery, hospital infections can be a huge problem. Is that true here also? Well, it's difficult but important to say. You know, I had a conversation about a relative's upcoming surgery recently. What is your infection rate? And a doctor who knows this is a problem will be able to talk about that. Could I see my chart, my medical record, right? And so these are things, and then my doctor added some things that clinicians say to encourage it. I'm here to work together on your health as a team, right? And he says, learn as much as you can about your condition. Here are some ways to get started. Talk about your condition with other patients. You're welcome to get a second opinion, he says. It's no insult. And this, I love this. Sometimes I'll bring him a website, and sometimes he'll say, yeah, that's good, or no, that's bad, but about half the time he says, I don't know, let's look it up. And he'll get out the computer and we'll go look at it together. It happens. And so on. And he also said, here are 10 things doctors say that discourage engagement. Right? If the doctor says, all right, here's what you're going to do, that discourages the patient from discussion. Stay off the internet. If you do search, don't bring it. We don't have time for that. This is a big one. We'll call you if anything's wrong. Well, anytime you get lab work done, you should insist on being told if it's okay or not. There was a paper published 2 years ago that said that 7% of lab results are accidentally never delivered, including if it's bad news. So you should always insist on getting it. And so on. Now, I want to close with something that's fascinating. You know, we were talking before Paolo and I were talking before the event tonight about how maybe 10 years ago people said, who needs smartphones? I don't need one of those. I'm getting along fine without it. It's hard to see the future. I mean, people said the same thing about cell phones before smartphones because everybody got along without it. But the same as with desktop publishing, where the world changed very fast once the information got out there. Does anybody know what this is? This is an iPhone case. It's available for Android now also. And these are 2 silver bars. You put your fingers on it and flip it over. It's an ECG, electrocardiogram. And it's not a toy, it's a real product, authorized both in the US and in Europe. In fact, in Europe, it was immediately approved in 2012 for sale to consumers. You can get one on Amazon now. In the US, of course, the FDA wanted to be careful, so it said a doctor can order it for you. You can't get one yourself because you might cut yourself on those spiky things there. Well, now it's available over the counter. Just you can go on Amazon and get one. And this world now, there are people in the diabetes community now who are taking data from their glucose monitors and putting it in the cloud so they can use open source software to analyze what's going on. There are some amazing things happening. Well, I was trying to educate myself. One of my tumors came out of my kidney and was touching on a thing called the psoas muscle, which I'd never heard of. So I found this website where I could see, oh, that's this big muscle. So when you lift your leg like this, that's the psoas muscle that's doing it. And I could see how a tumor sticking out would touch that. And as I was rotating this, I thought, this looks like Google Earth. Why can't I do that for my body? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it turns out that my doctors were happy to give me copies, and this will take 20 seconds to wake up, give me copies of all my scans. And so I have all my scans and my wife's scans and x-rays and everything in here. So there is a tumor in my lung, and I can go all the way down through here. Right? There's that golf ball size one over there. So I was playing with this software. It's free, open source software. And I saw a thing that said 3D viewer. And I clicked it and I said, what? May I introduce you to my ribs? So I can now understand what's going on here. So there's that tumor floating between my ribs. And what I love to do most is it has a slider so I can put the meat back on my bones. There's my skin. I come out further. What is that? It's my shirt. I had a piece of paper in my pocket when this CAT scan was done. Now you remember the thing about Thomas Getz, right? It's the same data as the just slices, black and white slices, but it's displayed with better software, so there's new information that I can see and I can understand more. And the important thing to understand here is that the future, right, is already here. These things are already happening. This is a science fiction writer lots of people quote him. The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. So we don't all have access to it. So if you want to see what's possible in the predictable future, you look at what has happened in other industries. And the project here that you're working on with sharing information between different doctors who are working for a particular patient, no doctor can possibly perform to the best of their training if they don't have all the information. And in fact, the ideal thing to look forward to is where the patient and family can look at the information as well at home. It's no insult to the physician. Remember, more than half the humans who have ever been 65, we're getting older and we're all going to have chronic conditions. Please let us help ourselves and let us help our families. One more thing. Now that everything is digital, have you heard about 3D printing in medicine? They're doing all kinds of amazing things. Well, you know, in desktop publishing, it started out with big, expensive, slow machines that were not very good quality, and then the quality got better and the price got better and so on. So I'm thinking, when will we have 3D printing for consumers? Well, at Christmas 2 years ago, I was coming down an escalator at the mall. It's at the Rolltreppe, is that what it is in German? And anyway, at the bottom was a sign that said, 3D print yourself. I thought, right. Well, I went and I looked. Permettez-moi de vous présenter les mini-me. I had myself 3D printed in 2 sizes. And it's amazing because, so this costs $45. That's maybe this big, and this one's bigger. And the quality is getting better, the price is getting better. And where this market will explode, see, remember the image of my scans? Well, when I went to a celebration in the Netherlands in September, and they took the images of my lungs and 3D printed my tumors in my lungs. So there they were. That's not going to be a big market to get your tumors printed. But on the other hand, some doctors now are printing a practice organ. A doctor who had to operate on a baby's heart printed, it's like a jelly copy of the baby's heart with the tumor in a different color to practice the surgery. Amazing things. And the market that's going to explode is baby statues. So you can have the baby at 6 months old, the baby at 1 year old, 2 year old, you know, just a line of them as the child grows up. I already wish I had a statue of, you know, my granddaughter when she was younger. So the world is changing, it's wonderful. Here's how this all played out in my life. This is a picture of me on the night of that I got that x-ray, a man who was dying of kidney cancer and didn't know it. 10 months later, do you have Halloween? No. Here it is, but you know what it is? Well, at the office Halloween party, somebody took a picture of me with this statue of a ghost coming out of the grave. I was very happy because I beat him, right? I had pictured my mother's face. I thought about my mother's face at my funeral, but instead in 2009, here we were laughing on the day when I got to walk my daughter down the aisle, and this is a wonderful thing to be alive for, you know? And then a year and a half ago, my granddaughter was born. I am so grateful for good medicine. I want to do everything I can to help make a better life for the doctors and nurses who saved me, and that's why I say, please, let patients help improve healthcare. Thank you.